I'll tell you, when they come out of the tree, look out.
On a bright autumn afternoon, Michael McDade is busy harvesting the black walnuts that fall from a huge old tree.
This is about my 6th time out here, so.
Mike and his wife use the walnuts to stain the reeds for their world-famous baskets. And not far away, a huge sign sits at the edge of his property with a message that's unmistakable: no pipeline.
Gas is dangerous, explosive, fire, everywhere it goes. It's just bad news for everything involved.
For McDade and his neighbors in Monroe County, the Mountain Valley Pipeline represents a huge threat to a cherished way of life. There's a strong sense of pride here on the Seneca Trail, born of a love of the land and of the community. But there's a fear that that bond might be broken by forces that people here feel they can't control.
We've heard from some of the folks from the pipeline company that they cite studies that it doesn't affect real estate values, and we believe that to be not true.
Dr. Stephen Miller isn't by nature a political animal, but the real possibility of a huge pipeline cutting through his farm and possibly fouling the local water supply forced him to take a stand.
What has been a real concern is what's going to happen with chronic turbidity, or even chemical spills if they would happen. But turbidity is a big one, meaning silt runoff, things like that, that can actually muck up your water and make it chronically silty or dirty.
As currently configured, the pipeline would carry natural gas from Wetzel County in West Virginia all the way to Pittsylvania County in Virginia, a distance of more than 300 miles. Throughout the permitting process, Mountain Valley has always maintained it won't move forward without permission from FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and, of course, permission from landowners like longtime farmer Jim Gore.
All of us whose property it passes are opposed to it.
For Gore and others, the fear is that the certification process is nothing but a smokescreen, a lot of paper pushing until the federal government signs off on the project and the bulldozing begins. For Gore, it's clear the clock is ticking.
You know, I tell them when they come and talk to me, I ask them why they're in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry to be invaded like that.
But their fight isn't lost, not yet anyway, according to environmental attorney Derek Teeney.
We absolutely could see a scenario where the federal committee or the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission says, not this route, but maybe another one. Let's take a look at that. And then the process would begin again on those.
Still, there's a nagging feeling that big money ultimately will prevail, and the Seneca Trail, with its rolling hills and bucolic way of life, will become just another superhighway for cheap energy.
And they've done it for years. They've done it with the railroad, they've done it with coal, they'll do it with gas and oil, and it'll just continue, you know, because it's money. People are greedy.
I have here a 300-foot tape, which I'm going to unroll to give you an idea of how much space the pipeline would take.
By any measure you care to use, the Mountain Valley Pipeline would be an environmental catastrophe, at least in the opinion of those who, like farmer Jim Gore, call Monroe County home.
Now this is the width of the construction corridor, 125 feet. So it's going to take up this much space.
The pipe for transporting natural gas would be roughly the size of a hula hoop, about 42 inches. For all intents and purposes, the project is still in the planning stages, but the proposed footprint looms large.
When they dig the ditch, it's got to be 8 feet deep, 8 feet wide, 309 miles long.
And it's that configuration that troubles residents like Nancy Bolden, because on official maps, the pipeline route runs right through her town of Linside.
What you have here for this big area is its bank, its grocery store, its gas station, its post office, its senior center.
A community.
It's the community.
And there's no telling what that might mean for Monroe County's only high school and Maverick football on a Friday night. MVP, the umbrella company overseeing the pipeline's construction, says there's an economic necessity for getting natural gas from northern West Virginia to a terminal that will distribute that gas to customers in Virginia. But this is God's country, people say in response.
To destroy our agricultural base in this community is a crime.
They point to a paradise of pastureland, deep forests, and abundant wildlife. So the outrage is understandable, especially since the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, seems to be minimizing the environmental impact at every turn. Like with the local water supply.
For FERC or the Forest Service or MVP says, well, we're going to have a minimal impact to your springs, they're guessing because we don't know.
The geology under nearby Peters Mountain is called karst. It's a fragile web of limestone caves and sinkholes that feeds but doesn't filter the water running into the local aquifer. So pipeline infrastructure placed on top of the mountain could easily pollute the groundwater.
And I've been at 3 scoping meetings where I've questioned MVP construction guys or the PR guys and said, what do you do if you either contaminate or my spring is lost? I live 2.5 miles over this way. The pipeline comes across the ridge behind my property. I'm totally dependent on springs. And they look at me and just say, we'll fix it. And I ask them how, it's deer in the headlight. They don't know how they're going to fix it, but that's what it'll tell you.
53% of the population of Monroe County get their water from that mountain.
For Jim Gore, the frustration goes beyond what might happen to his farm high on a ridge, one with a commanding view of a magical countryside, and where the cattle run free.
Out here in the rural part of the line, the pipeline will be thinner. I don't know if that's supposed to mean that our lives aren't as important as those of people that live in populated areas, but they're going to skimp on the line out here in the rural part.
So you have a reason to believe that you're more susceptible to accidents if the pipeline is thinner out here?
Yes, I really think so. You know, that stands to reason. It's just not as sturdy.
For its part, Pittsburgh-based MVP dismisses such comments, insisting the $3 billion project meets or exceeds federal guidelines, and in the long term will have very little impact. FERC doesn't go quite that far, but in public hearings, the agency has said repeatedly the pipeline's pluses outweigh the minuses, and besides, the no-build option is off the table.
Well, so far, the FERC hearings have been pro forma, so you might get the impression that this is a done deal, that the people here have lost the battle. But then you don't know West Virginians.
My attitude is if I've got to go down, I'll go down swinging.